The basic forehand is a wonderful building block, but you'd also like to be able to branch out and do a little bit more. First thing, you'd like to know what the differences are in the backswings, and they have different functions. The most basic backswing is a parallel backswing, or getting the racket straight back. This is wonderful for the beginning player. This is also very helpful anytime you're in trouble, to be very simple with the backswing. So what that looks like, as the ball comes, I'm going to get my racket straight back. I just wait it there, and all I do is go forward from the backswing to the point of contact. I'm prepared early. The chances of me being late go down dramatically. The downside to the parallel backswing is it's very difficult to generate any kind of speed, and what a lot of players will do to try to generate a little extra speed is they'll make that parallel backswing a little bit bigger and bigger, and then the swing starts coming around. Again, it messes with your timing some. But if you're in trouble or you're just learning to time the ball, this is a wonderful way to get the racket back. The second backswing is a looping backswing. Now, the looping backswing offers you a couple of things. You can generate more power. You can also begin to generate more spins. With the looping backswing, I want to keep my elbow in fairly close to my body, and as I turn, I'm just going to let the racket stay up nice and high around my head height. If you notice in my ready position, it's fairly close to that already. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit as I turn, and then I'm going to drop it down behind me as I go forward. This is the looping part of the backswing. With this, my racket can travel a much farther distance, and since it can travel a farther distance, I can begin to generate more speed. But I don't have the racket going behind me too much as I'm taking my racket with a longer path. So the looping backswing is very helpful to generate that speed. The looping backswing also is very helpful in getting underneath the ball and starting to generate more spin. Because as we know, spin does well when the racket head speed is high. It takes actually a lot more effect on the spin. We also ought to cover the stances. Now, there's basically 3 stances. Just a moment ago, we had talked about the closed stance. We don't really ever want to have this stance on purpose, although it may happen from time to time when the player's in trouble. The other 2 stances are a square stance, where my feet are facing sideways, facing the target, and an open stance. The advantage to a square stance is I can generate some speed by stepping forward into the stroke, but it does limit the amount of turn my body can have. With this, you might use this for a shorter ball or a more attacking stroke, and especially when you want to drive the ball. More modern technique has brought in the open stance into play. It's been around for a good 30 years now, but many coaches still have a hard time accepting that the feet can be quite open. In fact, you're going to see in just a minute something very interesting about the open stance and the weight transfer. But with an open stance, what this allows me to do is to move very wide for a shot if I need to. I still need to get my hips and my shoulders turned, but I can have a lot more rotation of my body going forward. This stance was originally popularized by a more semi-Western grip, where the hand is underneath the racket a little bit more. So with this open stance, the player starts with their feet wide open, they turn a lot more, and they have a lot more turn going through the shot. It also allows for a little easier time to get underneath that ball to hit some topspin and brush up on the ball. So the 2 stances that we look at often are a square stance, where you're attacking a little bit more, and a slightly open stance. We also want to talk about topspin and the difference between the path of the racket and what the angle of the racket face does. Now, on a flatter stroke, on your more basic stroke, you have a little bit of climb into the stroke. If you notice, the racket starts down low and it actually starts to move up a little bit as we go. I want some lift to this shot always, to get underneath the ball with some leverage and to have some clearance over the net. Sorry, I just hit my pro Franklin there. So I get that racket under the ball and I lift it up and I keep it away from Franklin this time. Now, when I want to hit a little more topspin, that path of the racket has to be a lot more vertical, as you saw in that last example. The path of the racket, when I generate more spin, has to be more upward, because I'm trying to get this ball to rotate and roll forward. The second part to that that's very important is the angle of the racket face. Many times when we start bringing that racket more upward, the face comes open. And what we talked about in the very beginning of this was an open racket face produces a high ball. So if I can keep that racket face square on this forehand, I'm going to generate a lot more upward swing. What a lot of times I'll actually ask the student to do when we're doing this demonstration is I'll ask the student to see if they can hit a ball down into the net while they're swinging up by closing the strings. You can even learn this by drop hitting a few shots down here and trying to brush up as you go. I just use my Prince frame instead of the strings on that. And the, the third thing that you can look at if you really want a lot of spin, which we'll go into detail much later, is to actually have the player drop hit a ball and follow through over their right shoulder to get the path of that racket going much more upward. And that's the heavy spin on the more advanced technique.